one of the most dominant races in the history of the championship. Mitch Evans wins in Mexico City. Yeah! Mitch Evans through the final corner to win the Romy Prix for Jaguar.
This is how it's done, mate. Superb drive.
So hello again and welcome back to Recharge at Home, where we try and give you a little insight into what everybody is up to at Jaguar Racing, whilst we are unfortunately not at the track. And I'm delighted to say that this time I am joined by Phil Charles, the technical manager for the team, and of course James Calado, a man who needs no introduction. Welcome to both of you. How are you both?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm very good, Amanda. Thank you. Getting a little bit bored at home, but enjoying my life as a sim racing driver mostly at the moment, and spending a lot of time on the indoor cycle bike. So staying home, staying safe, and just making the most of some family life.
Home for you is Cardiff, isn't it, in Wales?
It is, yeah. I live in a place called Penarth, just south of Cardiff. Lucky really, because we live right by the water. So when we can do our 1 hour exercise or whatever, or whatnot, we can look along the water. So despite the weather, it's an all right place.
And Phil, what about you? Where are you?
So I'm in Chipping Norton, and I'm in good shape. Desperately missing racetracks at the moment, but making the most of it, and all fine. We've got some lovely weather today, and we've been out and about and done our little bit of exercise as well. That's been really nice. So no, we're okay.
Well, that's great to hear. We've got no symptoms. Now, Phil, you just started really by saying there how much you were missing racing. I think it's fair to say for everybody who's involved in racing, it's a lifestyle choice as well as a vocation. It's something we all love doing. And with it comes an awful lot of travel. So what is it that you're missing the most about? And what is it that you're finding you have to adjust to now?
I think probably you're the same as me, Amanda, and most of the team. We're all addicted to that buzz of being at the racetrack. So the travel is probably the downside bit. You know, you don't miss standing waiting for your bag, going around the carousel. You don't miss a long haul flight, but you do miss that buzz. And being stood on the pit wall or being a mechanic or an engineer at the track is just non-stop. Excitement. You're part of it, a team, part of a group, and you get to measure yourself every week. So there's if you're into that, if you're a bit of an adrenaline junkie, you like to see how well you can do at something. Going racing just gives you all of that in spades. So as a group, as a team, we're all part of the kind of type of person that enjoys to do that, to go and get stuck in, get involved in something and get rewarded when you work hard and you get the return of fantastic performance or better performance. So we're all missing that. And that becomes a bit of a drug, I think. That's why perhaps a lot of us do it for a big percentage of their life, because you can't get away from that. You enjoy it so much. You enjoy getting the results. You live for the champagne, for the big podium days. You forget all the bad days, but you to the success and doing better. So I think most of our team, and we're having video conferences all day long now as groups. We're staying in contact because that kind of camaraderie in the group is a big part of what's making us good. And we're all staying in touch, and we're all saying a very similar thing. We're desperate to get back to the track, to get those results going again and enjoy our racing. We miss the racing, but making the most of this time as well. There are some positives. Time with the family that you don't normally get. We're getting that now, so that's good. But we're all, I think, I can speak for most of the team, if not all of the team, desperate to get back to the track.
How are you substituting that adrenaline hit? What are you doing at home?
So we haven't stopped. Well, across the team, there's lots of.
No, I mean you personally.
Me. So I'm enjoying pushing myself. That every day we're still working on the design for the cars that are coming in the future. So I'm pushing myself to get the most I can out of that. So although you can't be at the racetrack, we also take the same mentality into the work that we do every day. So I'm really enjoying putting my focus into some of the design for the future. I enjoy the design aspect of the car as much as I do going to the races and being involved at the racetrack. So for me this time, I'm able to really focus on some of the future development, some of the future design work. And I'm actually spending some time to learn some new things as well. So there's lots of bits on my list where we tickle the technology, if you don't mind my phrase. We understand a little bit of what's happening, enough to make use of it. But sometimes you want to go and get a bit more background to be able to apply it in the best way you can. So right now I'm spending a little bit of time each day reading up a little bit on some new technologies, different technologies, just to see if they can be useful to us. So you don't often get that bit of extra time to do that, whereas this slightly different world that we're living in at the moment does tweak the way that you work, and that's a little opportunity that has popped up.
And James, what about you? What are you missing the most?
I think just missing the facts of not being at a racetrack and racing the cars. I mean, race cars are enjoyable to drive, and the fact that there's not one available to actually go out and have fun in is the most annoying thing in the world. And obviously the competition, we do it to win, we do it to succeed, and we're at a right halt now. So the fact that we can't travel these countries and enjoy the racing is the biggest disappointment for me. But I'm sure in a few months we'll be back.
Now, of course, the big challenge with this situation is, as quickly as it came, we're hoping that the situation might change and we can get back to racing as soon as it's safe. Of course, you, James, have to stay on top form, even whilst you're sitting at home and you're not having the opportunity to actually race and be race fit by racing. So what are you doing to stay physically fit? And also, how important is staying mentally fit and agile as well?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I think actually it's an opportunity to train more, because we travel so much that sometimes we don't have time to do the proper training. So it's actually a good opportunity to spend hours, in my case, the garage on the bike, getting in the miles. And, I'm actually starting to lose a bit more weight, starting to feel a bit more sharp, but obviously we do miss the race fitness kind of things. And, that is one of the biggest things that gets you fit quickly, is just driving non-stop all the time. But, along with that, just trying to keep as sane as possible, really. Spending time with my family is always good. Just eating the right things and making the most of being at home whilst I can.
And now I was going to ask about that, because my problem is I'm quite close to the kitchen and I find myself ambling through quite a lot, just finding a snack. And I'm trying to stick to fruit, but not always. Weight is really important for you, not you personally, James, but just you as a driver. How are you making sure that you stay sort of on weight, whilst it is hard to actually stay physically active and maybe burn off energy that you would normally burn off very easily?
Yeah, I think it's just more common sense, really. Just trying to, like you say, trying to eat the right things, trying to stay away from the chocolate, the red wine, which is normally my guilty pleasure. So, just trying to eat the right things, just trying to train and have a well-balanced diet. I mean, of course, when you're stuck indoors and get a bit bored, you do have the odd, guilty bad thing. But, it's fine. You can do that as long as it's not too much. And, it's one of the reasons of staying sane, just to enjoy a bit of chocolate from every now and again. But it's like I say, common sense, eating well, and training as much as we can.
And Phil, for you guys in the garage, being physically fit is also really important, isn't it? I mean, you lot, I see you out running in the gym in hotels early in the morning when we're away.
Yeah, absolutely, Amanda. It's really, really important that as engineers we stay fit. Although we're not kind of exposed to the physical rigors actually of driving the car, our fitness is really important, because across a race weekend you work quite long hours and you need to be sharp. And quite often you've travelled either from a test or from a busy factory period straight into a race. So if you're not physically fit, mentally it catches you up. If you start to become tired, your performance will drop off across the weekend. And the last thing that we want to do is slow the drivers down, because we're not on our A game, making decisions as quick as we could do if we were really fit and really healthy and really alive and awake. So the fitness is an important part, and probably over my years in motorsport, that's become more and more obvious and become more and more important. That as I guess fitness in the general world has become more part of our daily routines. But I think in motorsport in general, we've all started to become fitter, and it's quite a part of the culture now. So it's definitely important that you stay on your fit side and keep up the exercise.
Right, now, both of you, we're going to sort of go back to the very beginning. I want to know how you got involved in racing, and sort of just chart very broadly with broad strokes how you ended up here at Panasonic Jaguar Racing. So James, let's start with you. How did it all begin?
A long time ago. I feel old. I'm not as old as Phil, but I do feel old.
Thank you.
It's all right. I started when I was 9 years old. My parents got me into it. So basically my dad always loved racing cars, racing drivers, and he always wanted to do it as a kid, but never got the opportunity. So when I was born, he always said to my mum, I'll bring someone or one of my kids into motorsport. And 8, 9 years old, I started racing at Shennington in go-karts as a novice, started to win a few races, and kind of progressed through the ladder really, all through karts. I think I spent 10 years in karts, which was some of the hardest racing ever imaginable. Phil can tell you that as well. And then I did Formula Renault for 1 year, and then GP3, GP2, and managed to do some test driving in Formula One. And now obviously being here as a Panasonic Jaguar racing driver in Formula E is a completely new concept, a new challenge. Only done a few races so far, but really enjoying it, and looking forward to getting back going again.
And James, I mean, you were racing in GT cars for some years as well, sort of in the middle of all that. You obviously had a lot of experience with single seaters though beforehand. What was the biggest challenge coming into Formula E and just adapting to this new type of racing and the new format?
Yeah, I forgot to mention the whole GT kind of things there. Yeah, I spent 6 years of my life doing that, but it's not as bad as I thought it would be to adapt, because I spent so many years in a single seater. So the kind of views, the way you're sat in the car and things like that all came back to me straight away. The thing that is different is the fact that it's a Formula E car. It's electric. It relies on purely software to perform well, and getting used to that, getting used to the fact that they're not slick tires, things like that took a little bit of time. But yeah, I think from the last race, I showed a really good qualifying, finally got some sort of rhythm with the car, finally found myself, didn't push too hard, didn't make as many mistakes as I had been in previous races. So it's coming on strong, and looking forward to getting back. But yeah, the adaptation was not as bad as I thought.
Phil, what about you? I mean, your job title now is technical manager. I don't suppose that's what you decided you wanted to be when you were a child?
Well, it's an interesting question. I'm actually a little bit of a failed or chosen chosen out of racing driver career attempt. So I actually started in karting at 8 years old. I had a friend that raced a scramble bike, who was slightly older, that lived in the village, and I came home and said, look, I really want to do that. And my dad said, I don't think so. We'll find something with a few more wheels or something a bit safer. And we got into karting like that. I kind of forced the family into taking me to watch some kart races, and suddenly we were buying a kart and doing it. And I loved it, really enjoyed it. Had from 8 to 21 years old, all those years racing. My peer group were the likes of Jenson Button, Anthony Davidson, Gary Paffett, who's recently raced in Formula E, Jamie Green. Lots of these guys that went on to be racing drivers, much along a similar path that James took. But somewhere along that path, I also realised I was quite good at school, and I enjoyed that aspect. And so it was a bit of a crossroads. You could see we're going to come up at some point. And actually, it was the British Championship Awards 1 year. I was second in the British Championship, I think, that year. And we went to Benetton at the time, Benetton F1. And I peeled off, and I'd already printed off some CVs as a 14 or 15-year-old lad, and went and popped them on the desks in some of the offices that were there. And I was really lucky. A guy rang me back, or two chaps actually rang me back from Benetton and said, would you like to come and work you work some work experience over the summers? And I came back 3 or 4 summers, starting off cleaning hydraulics trays in research and development, doing a bit of design work in the design offices, and starting to learn all about Formula One. And that really got the spark going as this is really where you're made to be, I think. And from there, pushed really hard at school, did as well as I could at school, got into a good university, again, pushed really hard at university. And all the way through, I kept in touch with the guys that I'd met at Benetton, and was very lucky at the end of that. Benetton had become Renault F1. I was very lucky to have a few interviews. I was actually a little bit a little bit overconfident. The first one that they rang me up and said, "Do you want to come to an interview?" I thought, "Oh, I've got this. You know, I know these guys already." I didn't get that job, and I went, "Oh, blimey!" And actually, a lad that I knew at university got that job. But luckily, I got called up again and said, "Right, yeah, that one wasn't quite right for you. Come to this interview." Went to that, and you know, it seems like 5 minutes later, I was working at Renault F1 straight out of university, and from there, my career progressed. I think 8 or 9 years at Renault F1. Then moved to Italy, Toro Rosso for 5 years, and then back to England. And very luckily, Craig Wilson from Williams Advanced Engineering gave me a call and said, "There's this Formula E series going on. How do you fancy getting involved in that?" And I thought I'll have a look at that, and absolutely blown away by the technology. And there I am. Here I am. This is how it happened. So yeah, very.
So you say. Sorry to interrupt you. You say you're blown away by the technology, but you've come from Formula One, which presumably is the pinnacle. What's the difference then? Why was the Formula E technology so worthy of the phrase "blown away"?
Yeah, well, so just to put it into perspective, I spent all those years in Formula One, really had a fantastic time there, and still have a big affection for Formula One. But when I first started to look into Formula E, it really was absolutely new, emerging technology. The motor and inverter technology was something that in the whole rest of the world, the whole automotive world, it was in really the early steps. And so I recognised at that point that that's a series that's really developing big chunks of automotive technology as it goes. In Formula One, we become super fantastic nowadays at making something really effective, really honed. But the technology in the last few years is a little bit more constrained by the regulations. Although the hybrid rules that came in 2008 or 9, I can't remember exactly, I think 2009, were a big step. The kind of, certainly the powertrain technology is a little bit more evolving at a slightly slower rate, whereas Formula E, as we step into it, as we've stepped into it at this point, really is on a massive slope upwards. So I really found that was a big draw. And I kind of thought, well, I'll go and have a look at that. And the more I looked into it, I thought, this is different. This is something that's new and emerging and exciting, and I'd really like to be a part of that. So it surprised me as well, to be honest. I thought I was Formula One for life, and this kind of jumped into my world, and it really grabbed me. And the technology certainly brought me to it. And then once you get involved in Formula, you see how close the racing is, and you'll be just as smitten as I am now. But the racing week to week is absolutely fantastic. So those two things absolutely drew me in.
And James, what about you? I mean, you've been traditionally racing internal combustion engines, GT cars as well. Talk me through how you ended up with the seat.
Well, to be honest, I've always followed Formula E, and I was on the original kind of drivers list to do the first season. However, it's not always easy contractually with certain teams. And at the time, I was pretty committed to racing GT cars. But yeah, I mean, myself, my manager, we pushed a lot to get involved in Formula E, especially as it started to grow. And yeah, we got in touch with Jaguar. It was a really long process of trying to write out all the contractual agreements between the two teams, but eventually got the seat. Spent a lot of time talking to Phil, trying to figure out little tips, because I'm sure there was many drivers available. So yeah, very thankful to get the seat, and yeah, just looking forward to really just want to get back racing and prove that I can fight at the top with the big boys.
What was the first tests that you did in the Formula E car like?
Really, really interesting, because I found it so easy to make mistakes. Spent a lot of time on just an airfield practicing the basics, but a lot of making mistakes. But eventually, everything came to grips. Obviously,
What kind of mistakes?
I'm not sure. I should say Phil knows, but yeah, just spins and things like that. But the fact that it was quiet, electric, you can't brake in the same way as you can in a GT car. You can't turn in the same way as a GT car. It's all completely different to drive. So spent a lot of time testing, a few accidents, but finally, just as this is all stopped, I was finally getting in the rhythm, finally finding my feet with the car. So hopefully I don't forget that.
I mean, you've said when I've spoken to you, when you've just had a hard session, that it's a really hard one to master. I know Saudi was a difficult one, I mean, but it was the first race as well. Is it the car, is it the format, or is it both that make Formula E unique and challenging?
Yeah, I think it's both. The tracks are super difficult. Firstly, going to Riyadh as for my first race was the biggest challenge ever, because that is one of the hardest tracks. At the time, it was full of sand, there was no grip. So if you just went offline by a couple of inches, you're in the wall. I showed that twice, 3 times. But, it's a matter of just, I was over driving a lot. I was trying to push too hard to find the time. So a lot of it is myself. We know the car is super competitive. We've seen that with Mitch. So yeah, I think as long as I don't overdrive, like I did a good quali in Marrakesh, just basically did a lap where I just wanted to keep it clean. It was literally a 90% lap, but already was there 10th. So, it was just a few tenths off. So it's just managing that percentage of how much you push. And then, yeah, that's the most difficult thing. In a GT car, you can kind of get away with it. You can overdrive a little bit, but in the Formula E, for sure, you can't. Not forgetting that Formula E is super competitive. 1/10 can be 5-6 positions. So yeah, good place to be.
It sounds, I mean, from listening to what both of you are saying, that there is a huge thrill in being part of this. Can you describe, James, or we'll carry on with you, just that thrill of getting it right when you're out on track? Is there any way you can articulate what that feels like?
Yeah, I think you're always in a real pressured environment in Formula E. As you said, it's all like a one-day format. So when you get that lap, when you hit a good lap, it does feel really, really good. And it gives you confidence going forward, throughout the sessions. So it's important that you get them in, especially these 250 laps, which we did in Marrakesh perfectly. And it's just, the whole thing is just a massive thrill. And when you start the race to when you in a pack of people, all the same, fighting for that one position, it's just a huge thrill. And this is what I'm missing most. This is what I'm missing, being on the racetrack and getting that thrill. At the same time, I've started at the back a few times in some of the races, but come through and scored points. And every overtake was like, yes, I've done it. Yes, I'm in the points. So yeah, the whole thing is a massive thrill. And just so enjoyable.
Phil, what about you? Because I mean, you've got the thrill, if you like, of running the garage, looking after everybody in there as well, but also, as we've experienced more recently, starting to get some podiums as well. Can you describe what that's like?
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, it might help if I put James's comments a little bit into perspective, if you don't mind, Amanda. So James mentioned when he first jumped in the car that he made mistakes. And actually, what we recognised or measured in James very early on, these cars are so difficult, but he has got a loop in him that corrects very, very quickly, which is something he shares with Mitch. And so although he might feel like he's making lots of mistakes, Formula E, the car is so difficult to drive that everybody's making mistakes. And it's actually how you adapt to that makes you good in Formula E. So we measured in James something that we see in Mitch, which is a very closed loop reactivity almost. So his feeling of particularly these cars, as they brake, they move around on the tyre a lot under braking. They tend to lock wheels very, very easily. And that transitions into turning into the corner. So we measured very early on with James at the track. He mentioned going to an airfield. We did lots of tests, just braking turn. It was a very simple track on the simulator. We measured a very strong reactivity in James that made him good at what he does, and will over the long term start to really show through in Formula E. So he might be almost more critical of himself because he's looking for perfection in other cars. It's easier to get closer to perfection. These cars are tricky, really difficult. So that's the first thing, just to try and put into perspective what he's feeling. From my side, the real buzz, we mentioned before, I love going to the pit wall, love being involved in the races, but the real buzz for me at the moment, or one of the biggest things that I'm enjoying at the moment, is we're building a team. We arrived at the championship a little bit late, which I think on one of your previous podcasts, James described really well, that difficult time of getting up and running. I came in just as season 4 was starting, so I can't really claim any of the design work in the car in 4, although I can claim, as we go beyond that I've been involved with building a group. And as we've gone into season 5 and season 6, the way that they work together is starting to show results. The way that their input into the design, into the tools around the car strategy, some of the control systems, the way that all of those items kind of interact together, that's all been growing really, really positively. So James might have described really the start being tricky to get going, but right now I'm taking a lot of pleasure out of the fact that all those parts that we've been working on for the last couple of years, really making big changes in certain places, putting those together, they're starting to pay off now. And the results are coming at the track as a result. So I quite often say that we're engineers and we really focus a huge amount on all the little engineering bits. But actually it's the people that make you faster. If you put the right people together, then it really starts to show, results start to come out. And that's the bit I've been enjoying, is when you get those moments at the track where you've had a podium. I really enjoy turning around and seeing all the people that are all celebrating together, because I know all the work that they've put in and the way that they're working together is delivering that. So that's a big thing for me at the moment, is that group.
Phil, I know you mentioned earlier as well about running the team remotely, so you're all still regularly having video conferences. The fact that you travel so much, and I mean the off season is a very short season, even then you're busy testing, so you're away a lot. Does that mean that you and the team are much better suited improvising to the situation that we find ourselves in now than maybe if we weren't in the position where everyone had to travel so much?
Yeah, I think we by accident or by nature of the championship, we kind of pick people that are good at adapting. If you go to a new track and there's a different condition, they can react really quickly, and that's what makes them good at their job. So I guess if you look at the way that we work at the moment, we just had to stand back as if it was a new track, new condition, or a new car, first day of testing, and try and assess what it does, what it doesn't do very well, what makes it fast, what makes it slow, and just try and tweak around that. So I've been really proud of the group that they've very quickly changed the way that they work in this scenario. So we are having lots of video conference calls where we all get together and kind of plan the next few days. So although you can't just kind of lift your head across the desk and find out what Bob's up to, and he give you a bit of feedback, we've adapted really quickly to booking the right meetings, the right people together, understanding what we have to do over the next few days, and making sure that we keep in contact when it's more difficult to keep in contact. So I think the group have reacted really well. They are really adaptable. They're all reactive people, and I think it's been making the most of a tricky circumstance.
What are the challenges that we're facing?
Well, the main one for us is access to a lot of the big things that we like to do a lot of. So we can't just go to the simulator, bring in James and Mitch and test an item. We can't just go into our research and development department and go and test a powertrain component. And we can't go to the test track and go and do a test. So we're really missing those big item, particularly test events at this time. So we're trying to put together our season 7 car and develop our season 7 car. We've been working on that for 8 or 9 months. We're desperate to go and take it to a track, take it to a dyno and measure bits of it. We can't do that. So we're having to be clever and work around those limitations. It means that we're looking again even harder at our offline simulation tools. So all the work that we do to put in place software that simulates the way that those components work, we're having to really jump on that even more than ever and work around that to make sure that we understand, doing some extra sim, doing lots of work to try and understand when we get that car testing, what will be its limitations, and to try and fast forward that work when we do get to the track. So there's lots of activities that we can do, and we're just limited by the few that we can't. So we have to be clever and work around those in particular.
Because Phil, you've also got little people there, although you've hidden them at the moment.
Yeah, I've got an 8 and a 4. James has got some little people too, and that's been really good. But and we mentioned before, one of the downsides of going racing and traveling a lot is you aren't always at home for every birthday, for every thing that is big in their lives. So being there at the moment, that's a really nice thing. Tucking them into bed every night and doing the story, that's a big part of their life. So we get the chance to do that at the moment. And certainly some of the families, we've been working really hard to try and make the car faster for James and Mitch to really deliver the results. Some of those guys that work in the factory have been putting the big hours in. So this is returning a little bit of family time to them, which is one nicety from a difficult situation.
And James, of course, you've got your little daughter as well, who I know you miss tremendously when you're away. It must be great being able to spend so much time with her now that you're at home so much. I bet she doesn't know what to make of it.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing, to be honest, because at times I always wonder if she's going to forget me, you know, when we're racing so much. But to be able to spend, what is this now, my third week at home with her and Lauren, of course, is fantastic. And yeah, she's actually only just started to walk. She's been in a cast the last 6 weeks, so we removed that the other day, and she's just started to get back on her feet again. So we've been doing little walks just outside the house and around where I live, which is fine, and yeah, enjoying life. But I'm still she's still in nappy changing mode, so I've had to change nappies and do all that sort of thing, which normally I don't do. But yeah, that's certainly an experience. But yeah, just real
easier
life
to change tyres on a racing car than change a nappy, that's for sure.
I've got to say, Lauren is much quicker than me, so in that aspect.
Hey, you can set her a challenge.
Yeah.
If you can,
Just
see if
race
you can
her.
match her. Yeah.
You can do the fastest time, yeah.
That might get messy.
But James, through all of this, presumably you're still in close contact with your engineers.
Yeah. We spend a lot of time on Zoom, which is what we're on now, doing debriefs. You can share the computer remotely. So film engineer and Connor went through absolutely everything from Marrakesh, just as if I was at Grove at the factory. So really interesting things to see going forward. Learned a lot just in that 2 hours that we had talking about the race. So yeah, just need to get on the sim, get back going again, and get back racing. That's all I want to do right now.
But you've been racing. You've been doing some of this the sim racing online, haven't you? How's that been going?
Oh, it's like the hardest thing in the world. It's been going okay. I was racing James Barkley yesterday, up to about 10 o'clock at night last night. So that was good fun. But yeah,
competitive.
Yeah, he is very competitive. Yeah, and actually not too bad a driver. He's pretty quick. So impressive stuff. But yeah, I've entered in a few online races. My first one was on Saturday, I think, where I crashed in the first. I got taken out in the first race. But it is good fun, and you're speaking to all the drivers, and you can't imagine some of the language that you hear. It's pretty severe, but it's good fun. It's the only thing we can really do right now. The closest thing to reality we can actually get to. So, yeah.
So, question to both of you: given the amount of time that you both spend on the road, having a daily routine under normal circumstances, I guess, is virtually impossible. But do you have a daily routine now, James?
Yeah, kind of. I kind of just get up when I want, which is quite nice, because in Formula E we always have to get up at the crack of dawn, 5 a.m. at some point. So just get up, breakfast, train when I can, go out for a walk at lunchtime. I guess just routine. And we can't really do much. We can't see people. We can't socialize. So we're just at home all the time. And got through a lot of Netflix as well. I'm not even sure what I'm watching now, but a lot of Netflix. So
can you recommend anything good?
What am I watching now? Tiger. What's it called? Tiger.
Oh, Tiger King.
Tiger King. Yeah. Which I'm 50-50 about at the moment. So I'm on the second episode. But yeah, I've been watching a lot of things.
And Phil, what about you? We can come on to Netflix later if you have got anything to recommend. But have you got a daily routine going at the moment?
I have. So my alarm clock, he's 4 years old. He's called Stanley. You don't have to set your phone. He goes off at exactly the same time every morning, about 6 o'clock. Fortunately, I'm an early up out of bed anyway. So I'm probably a little bit easier than James in respect of we're working normal hours. So I like to do a run before I get going in the morning. So I've got a running machine, and I do a quick 20 or 25 minute blast, and then it's into the normal day. And we are working just normal office hours. So it's a little bit more routine sleep. Like you, Amanda, you tend to get good at the travel as well. So managing to work in our normal daily routine more often. So that's a bit more settling for the body, I think. So yeah, just a run in the morning and get going into a normal day. And no Netflix recommendations at the moment.
What are you both most looking forward to when lockdown is over, Phil?
Well, for me, it's absolutely getting our season 7 car running, getting to the test track, and continuing the work on season 7. That for me is the big thing I'm looking forward to. There's lots of hours and lots of engineering hours gone into that car, and we're really excited about it. So for me, it's getting on the go with that car really, and spending the time getting to know it a little bit better, and making it fast as well.
And James?
I think just getting out and about, firstly, and obviously the obvious answer to that is to get back on a plane and get back in a race car, no matter what it is. Looking forward to getting back to normality, really, and enjoying my racing as much as I can. Seeing my friends, that's something I find really difficult, not being able to just go out and see my friends when I'm home. But yeah, just the obvious things, really.
Right, now we have a challenge. I asked Mitch and James the same question, and I'm now putting it to both of you. I'd like you both, don't look so surprised, James. I'd like you both to give me your ideal driver lineup. Bill, I'm going to start with you. It cannot be an existing driver, so you can't therefore choose James or Mitch. We need one driver from the past, one driver from the present. They don't need to have ever been in Formula E before. So your ideal driver lineup, fantasy Formula E, we'll call it. Phil, who would you choose in your team?
Okay, well, so my first one, the guy from a previous, or the guy or girl from a previous racing world, is a really easy one. When I first was doing my work experience that I mentioned earlier at Benetton F1, Michael Schumacher was racing then, and even stood as a bystander. You could see how involved he was with the car. So he's absolutely the first one. The guy from the past, it's Michael for me. And all those championships he won. I've since worked with quite a few guys that were engineering his car over the years, or were involved on the engineering level, and they all speak so highly of him. So for me, he was quite aggressive in the car at times, but absolutely, because of his work ethic and the way he applied himself to his racing, he's absolutely my first pick. And then my second pick, so if I understand right, so it can be a current Formula E driver, but just not one of our two.
Correct, yes. Or it doesn't have to be Formula E. It could be a driver from another championship, but just a current racing driver. Okay,
well, then I'll answer it in two parts and then give you a final answer. So in Formula E, I've got quite a few.
Well, hold on a second. You can't, because whoever you choose, James can't have.
Okay.
So you.
Well, I'll make one choice. So I was lucky in Formula One to work with quite a few of the young Red Bull guys. So Verstappen, Sainz, Kvyat, Ricciardo, and all of those guys were super good. So I'll always have those in my mind. But actually, I think that the Formula E grid is really, really strong. So even considering the Verstappen, who was an absolutely amazing talent, I think I would probably pick Sam Bird. And James actually knows Sam pretty well from his own previous racing too. James has seen it probably more close than I have, but we do a lot of stats on the various drivers, and there are some fantastic drivers in Formula E, like I say, and that's why I think the bar in Formula E is so high. It's a really difficult championship because the cars are difficult, but also the level of the drivers are absolutely fantastic. And Sam tends to deliver very regularly, almost beyond the performance of the car. And I'll say that without kind of making it sound too glorified, but he genuinely does week on week eke out the best that we, if we kind of measure all the cars and all the drivers, he tends to deliver more at the potential of that package than not. So I would rate him very highly, and he's my vote. But I'll also mention some of the others. I work with Jev. I mentioned the Red Bull guys. I work with Jev. He's got a huge natural talent. Sebastian, delivers results.
You can't do this, Phil, because you're giving James loads of.
I am giving him some tips, but I think he knows this already. He's seen them in action. So we've got some really, really strong drivers in there. Lucas was also at Renault F1 a long time ago. I don't know whether he even remembers me, but I was a test engineer when he tested. So there are some absolutely fantastic drivers in Formula E at the moment. It's such a such a strong field. And I think my reference from the drivers that I've worked with in F1 is a really interesting one. And I can, hand on heart say that the drivers in Formula E really are very, very strong.
Okay, James, over to you now. Unfortunately, I can't even remember who his second driver was. Sam, that's right. So James, you can't have Michael Schumacher or Sam Bird. Who would your ideal driver lineup be?
Okay, well, I was going to say Michael Schumacher before Phil did, purely because it's a little bit out of my era, obviously, but I heard a lot of stories about Michael working with the guys in GT. So I would have said Michael, but if I can't say Michael, I'd have to say Ayrton Senna from the past, purely for the sheer speed that he had. When you look at those onboard videos of the car control, like Monaco, Jerez, it's just absolutely incredible. So to have someone with that raw speed would be awesome. Current driver, it's really difficult to ask a driver. Sam is a great driver, by the way, because I spent a lot of time with Sam in the GT cars. He was my teammate. So yeah, everything Phil has said about Sam is totally correct.
It looks great in a sombrero or a poncho.
Yeah, that was good times. But I'm just trying to think. Formula E, I don't really know. I wouldn't want to say anyone. I've been teammates with Jean-Eric Vergne, but I'm probably not going to say Jean-Eric. I'd have to say Lewis Hamilton.
Same as Mitch.
Oh, really?
Mm.
Yeah, because, he's been so successful in Formula One. Again, super quick, different. The way he reacts, it's not your standard kind of Formula One driver. He does things differently, does pretty much what he wants, obviously within reason, but succeeds and wins a lot of races. So those two.
Well, that wraps it up for Recharge at Home. I'd like to say a great big thanks to Phil Charles and James Calado. From all of us here, we hope you stay well, stay home, stay safe, and we'll be seeing you very soon. Bye-bye.
One of the most dominant races in the history of the championship. Mitch Evans wins in Mexico City. Yeah! Mitch Evans through the final corner to win the Romy Prix for Jaguar.
This is how it's done, mate. Superb drive.